So when I say 1996, what comes to mind?
30 years ago.
I was a baby. So.
Back in 1996, I am still in university. Life is much simpler back then.
High school, getting in trouble, listening to grunge rock, listening to hip hop, driving my parents crazy.
I was still a secondary school student. I told my parents I want to learn computer, but actually I mostly use it for playing games.
In 1996, I had very frizzy hair. I was in high school, probably playing tennis.
I was a lifeguard in high school. And I was being interviewed by my local paper as saying that being a lifeguard was probably the best job I would ever have.
The year is 1996. The internet arrived. A new wilderness. Most brands brought the instincts of an older world. They mistook noise for connection. Then, something unprecedented. Strangers tapping their desires into machines, hungers, ambitions. For the first time, the consumer was telling you in plain language exactly what they wanted. Most of the industry did not hear them, but one agency in a quiet corner in Boston asked a different question. What if, instead of chasing, you went to those already searching? The world comes to know us as iProspect.
Here we go.
The biggest shift wasn't technology, it was the speed of decision making from clients, from the dollars they were spending, what was driving the output for their business.
We were still working with handwritten billing papers, mass media, and largely one-way messaging. It wasn't quite Mad Men, but it wasn't far off.
There were huge advertising on billboards, on TV, on the radio.
Tra il 2006 e il 2007 si è iniziato a parlare di digitale in maniera importante.
iProspect, but the world's first search agency, Google, was founded 2 years after. So before the industry started talking about performance marketing, iProspect was already building a business around measurable outcomes. The thing that they spotted was that intent was going to be one of the most important signals in marketing in the future.
If you look at our timeline over those last 30, we've drastically changed from a small internet prospecting search agency to a full funnel media agency that's driving outcomes.
Search was our origin story and growth became our mission.
That video is very long. I was hoping they weren't going to play the entire edit. So yes. So hopefully 30 years for iProspect. Amazing. That feels like the world is such a different place 30 years in. So yes, we're here to celebrate that. We've got a fun-packed next hour for you. And we've got some prizes. It's never a presentation without some prizes to keep you motivated and interested and engaged through the overall session. So we've got, you might have seen these cases here. They're real items from 1996 from our friends at eBay, so thank you, eBay. And so we'll be having a taste of 1996 prize draw. You'll see QR codes around, scan them, and you could win some fabulous prizes from that year. It'd be really fun. That's going to happen at the end. I think my friend Dan's going to come on and do that for us. And we've also got some glasses to win from Meta as well. So again, QR code, draw, chance to win that at the end of the session. So lots of fun and prizes as we go through. This session will last about an hour. We've divided it into 3 sections and really thinking about the world 30 years ago. And although it feels like a long time ago, what's incredible about 1996 or that period is there are an amazing amount of businesses that were founded around that time that have fundamentally changed the way we communicate and the way that we think about business. And so we're going to explore that in some of our sessions that we've got for you this afternoon to really bring it to life and talk about how those businesses have navigated the last 30 years. So session number 1 is really what's happened over those 30 years and what does it take to reinvent and adapt as you go through such significant change. And that will be with our friends at Google. So we'll have that panel first and have that discussion. Session number 2, or accelerator session number 2, is about reinvention. And we're going to get eBay, Pinterest, and Dollar General up on the stage for a panel just really talking about that reinvention and kind of being really relevant to today. And then chapter 3 is about velocity, and that one is very well named because that is Hilton McLaren Racing and the F1 Titan team with Lando Norris. So that'll be our session at the end of the day that we bring it home with. So yes, we'll break it into those sessions for you as we go through. Before we kick off with the first session, we were thinking about, as we were crafting this, sort of what's happened over the last 30 years. And I think about iProspect. It was founded as a search business back in 1996, and it saw things that nobody else saw. And it jumped on it and realized that actually the art and the really way to win was to set up a very specialist agency that could help people use search every day, which they weren't doing previously. So we really spotted something that's ahead of the curve. I wasn't here in 1996, but what I know is true now within the brand as it becomes today is that really accelerating change and creating the future is very much part of our DNA. And what you're going to hear the team talk about today and our clients talk about is actually we have this huge passion for experimentation and innovation, which keeps for all of you, our clients, you at the forefront. And we really are early adopters. And again, we'll talk about how important early adoption and diving into this technology and not being afraid to try and fail is going to be. And we'll bring that to life through some of the sessions. So one of the things that partners I'm going to bring up first to talk about how that last 30 years has really developed and how do you stay ahead of the curve. And really, how do you continue to pioneer as things accelerate and that change just gets even faster? So I'm going to have a conversation with Brendan from Google. So please come, Brendan, to the stage. Brendan leads the search ads and commerce business at Google. And yes, a perfect person to have this conversation with in terms of where we are and how we got here and what to look out for in the future. How's your can, Brendan?
Hot and busy.
Hot, yes. Everybody's using the word hot right now. So I like to ask this question at the beginning of every one of our 30th celebrations. We were just talking about it on the side, which is, what were you doing in 1996?
I was kind of on the transition probably from the non-work world to the work world, but I'll round up to 30 years. And I basically, my first job was as an account coordinator at a small search engine back in the day called LookSmart, back when there were a variety of search engines. And if you're unfamiliar, LookSmart served the directory results for Microsoft back in the day, which was our claim to fame. So yeah.
Okay, fun. Yes, like we said, it just feels like what happened in that 30 years. So, Brendan, we've got some questions for you to really sort of center us and on the change that we've seen and the acceleration of it. So, search, which, again, that's how iProspect was founded and where you started in the world, it's changed how everyone, all of the people here, find everything. And that's the key thing. You know, right now, how we think about finding things, we always go to search. But when did it stop being a tool and start being an infrastructure for how brands grow?
The way I think about, we've got two, I would say, enduring missions from both a consumer and a business perspective: organize the world's information, make it universally accessible and useful. That's the mission statement that we have to help people on their information-seeking journeys. The other side of that is, again, how do we ultimately, from an advertising perspective, connect the marketers and businesses that we work with those users. Both of those are supercharged by AI. And again, I think search has evolved over time, over that 30 years. But I think this trend and this pace of what's been happening over the last 10 or so has been powered by AI. We like to say the Gemini advantage is your advantage. Demis is speaking on the main stage right now. Thank you for coming to this instead of that. But at the center of how we operate at Google is to leverage that core Gemini advantage, that differentiation from a model perspective, and deploy it into the products and services that we have, both on the organic and the consumer side and the ad side. And so how that manifests is things that we've built and developed, like AI mode and AI overviews, which ultimately is about helping users and consumers that come to Google in those information journeys. They are now a more empowered consumer than they have ever been before. They're a more confident consumer. And as we've seen, as we've brought these services to market, we've really kind of de-frictioned what was historically a limitation on what you could do in search. We had an amazing business in partnership with many of those of you in the room, but it was predicated on going in and typing in keyword ease. And now you can really come and express yourself in any way you want in multimodal ways. And when you do that, you find that actually people will express their curiosity in new ways. And so again, we're incredibly excited about that. And we're seeing a variety of new paradigms for how people search. Again, we've shared this before, that people are searching much longer. So queries in AI mode are 3 times the typical length. We're finding that 1 in 6 are multimodal in nature, and that ultimately image search tends to be one of the fastest growing. And then on the advertising side, it is about how we bring AI to help partners show up and reach users in that moment across targeting, bidding, and creative. And so at the end of the day, the mission's durable. It is about leveraging technology to enhance the mission on both of those dimensions.
Perfect. I've been judging for the last couple of days, or 3 days. I've been locked in a room. This is my first day out, so if I get overexcited. But it's been really interesting, even in the entries in the Palais, looking about how people are really adapting. I've been judging media, but how they're adapting search and really integrating it into their business and how they're thinking about building their products and adapting their products as well. So you can really see that evolution. Talking of evolution, as you've just said, you've been masters of reinventing the category. This AI shift, and there's a lot of clients in the audience today, and I know we have lots of conversations around it where people are like, how do I get there? How big is it? Should I be worried? How do I think differently? So what makes this AI shift significantly different to some of the other changes that we've sort of ridden through, from mobile, voice, all the other things that you've navigated?
So I think I often when I engage and speak to customers is that there are some parallels from the mobile pivot to this pivot. This one certainly feels, I think, more significant and more expansionary in particular ways. At the end of the day, and I was in a very similar function at Google as we're making that transition to mobile, the 3 kinds of things that customers always ask is what's the future of the consumer experience? It's very germane to what we're talking about today of what is the future of the consumer experience on search? The second is, what is the future of monetization? Is it a headwind or is it a tailwind? And how do I think about that? Again, very germane to every conversation we have with customers. And then third is, how do I get ready as a business to best meet that moment? They're exactly the same conversations that I have with customers around the world, often in a little bit of a different flavor. But I think that there are so many baselines that we can take from that for how to best meet that moment. And I think especially from an enterprise perspective, whether you're an agency or a client, is I think tapping into the history of how you met that moment. I think one of the key things that we often see is the criticality of how as a senior leader within an organization, you set the conditions for making that pivot. And it really does have to be a deliberate and intentional strategy, and develop and establish a strategy either through your agency partners or within your own organizations to do that. As it relates to, I think, what is different, it is this notion that it is more expansionary. I think in mobile, it was more about this common use cases, just in a different form factor. But I think this expansionary nature of how things are playing out, where users are coming in new and different ways, is one of the biggest things. And then ultimately, again, like I said, it is how I show up. And I find all of the conversations I've had thus far have centered around this conversation of what do I need to do as a business to show up? And I'm starting to hear good themes and trends on what is required. But I think going from strategy to execution to impact, I think is the thing that people are starting to sort through.
Yeah. I love that expansive. I think that's very true, isn't it, in terms of how people are experiencing and finding things, and basically, having everything becomes an experience versus a journey, which is really important. There's a question here, which is, what real impact does AI have on search and commerce beyond the hype? You've talked eloquently about what it does, but what's the real impact at the heart of it that our clients should be thinking about?
Well, I mean, for one is the very 2 simple things that I will say more broadly, and then I'll cover off, I think, more on the commerce side. People search more. They trust the results more. They are more empowered. So all of those things seem very positive. And then from an advertising perspective, and all of the products that we've built and developed, whether they're AI Max or PMax, We have uplift claims that talk about the incremental conversion value or volume when you use and leverage them, and it's really just driving bottom line business results. So I think you have users who search more, that again, I think can be net accretive to businesses. They trust more, and that ultimately, again, when you use some of these AI-based campaigns, you get more value. And I think that that's certainly, I think, I would serve the stake on those points. But then more broadly for commerce, we've been certainly planting the seeds for where we are today. We've had the shopping graph, if you're familiar, again, the GMC feed, if you work with Google from a retail perspective, which has been foundational and a differentiator for as we get into probably the SEO and GEO side, is really critical. How do I give you the right assets? We've had GPay, we've had Wallet, we've had a cloud business and the infrastructure that goes with that all starting to manifest into this more agentic commerce landscape or opportunity. And while early, incredibly, incredibly excited about what is the potential for commerce moving forward. And again, I think it's the way I think about what you need to do to get ready to meet this moment. It is number one, is if you are especially in a category where we leverage feeds, it is the depth and breadth of assets that you provide, again, is what is going to power ads and organic experiences. The second is more marketing. It is about data strength and truly understanding the value in AI-based campaigns. And then certainly last but not least is starting to think about how within the enterprise you leverage solutions like the Universal Commerce Protocol, which we've built in partnership with the industry, to ultimately start to think about how for your own first-party product, how do you get ready for an agentic future? So a lot of the seeds are planted. We're super excited. It is still early. And again, I think there are a lot of very clear, actionable things that marketers can do to get ready for what is both immediate impact that we've talked about, and I think more to come.
Yeah. Have you got any advice on, and I'm just short session, just on that you've talked about a lot of change management there and a lot of seeds being planted, and you've been through this yourselves as an organization, but as advice to clients and teams in the audience, just about the change management piece, how to get ahead of this?
It's leadership, leadership, leadership. The way I often is, the companies, if I think about the bell-shaped curve of the millions of advertisers that we work with, we see some leading and we see some lagging, and there's plenty of research that supports this. It's very hard for Brendan in the organization to be a mobile saying, hey, I think we should pivot to mobile, or I think we should be pivoting in some particular way. The conditions need to be set at the top and develop a strategy and move the organization along. The way Google has operated, we've said we've been AI first for 10 years. That's Sundar stating the goal, stating the objective, and the organization then comes along and builds products and solutions. And that is leadership of setting a vision and then ultimately being able to execute against that. And I think that's what set us up for being in this moment now to really have the flywheel cranking is leadership. Again, there's so much more to it than that, but absent that, again, we all work in large organizations. It's really hard to execute in large matrix organizations. Leadership, alignment, and incentives are the three things that I think are the most important to move a large organization along.
I'm going to take those forward with me. Thank you for that. We talk with our clients a lot about attention, and I know brands have always competed for attention. But at the moment, they're sort of hiding inside of algorithms that they don't control. How should they think about, you mentioned it earlier, but how should they think about SEO, and what does winning look like?
So this is the thing that people want to talk about, I find. And again, there might be some selection bias in my role, but I do find that this is one of the most topical things that come up in discussions with customers. We've been really clear, and when I talk about what is happening with search, it is still under the hood the core product. It is crawl, rank, index, retrieve, but it is supercharged by AI. Again, new inputs and new outputs. And so when we say, in this broader topic of AEO or GEO or SEO, SEO is a good GEO strategy because it's still under the hood all of the things that we've done to build the kind of the core of the product. But the added pieces to that, and this is also something we've always talked about, is the criticality of content. It is about unique, differentiated content that matters within the organization. We've always said helpful, reliable, people-first content, which is just code for good, high-quality, differentiated content. If you think about things we talk about, EEAT, experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trust. If you're unfamiliar, you should look those up. It is ultimately what we're looking for to show in the search results, something that is differentiated. And then the third thing is ultimately that is about third-party corroboration. And so when we build these experiences, we want to show when people are searching factual information, differentiated understanding of what the brand's talking about, and then third-party opinions and perspectives. Sometimes we want to trust the brand, but often we want to hear from others that kind of have more of a unbiased opinion for a product or service. And so it's those three things that ultimately people need to be thinking about to best meet this moment. And there's a lot more behind it, but I think that's the oversimplification of how to think about it.
Okay. It's good to have top of mind, though, in terms of how they're organizing as well as thinking about those things. And, you're great at predicting the future and the what next and what we should be looking out for. But just talk a little bit, because I know quite a lot of our clients here sort of spend money on search. So talk a little bit about search ads. What should we be expecting and what's evolving?
Thank you for your business. I'd start there. But at the end of the day, both while that consumer change is happening and catalyzed by AI, it is very hard, as we like to say, to move at the pace of consumers. If queries are longer, 3 times the normal length, if they are multimodal, it is very hard to pick keywords. It is very hard to write effective creative. And so it is all about AI-powered campaigns that are going to help you be agile. And so that's why we've built things like Performance Max, purpose-built from the ground up to reach consumers across surfaces. Or if you want a little bit more control and just to reach users on search, things like AI Max, which is, again, purpose-built to make it easy to seamlessly upgrade from your existing campaigns to be more agile so that you can show up in different ways. And at the end of the day, and again, it is a business choice to stay, I think, confined to picking every keyword, doing manual bidding, to writing every creative. That is a choice, but it is going to be very hard, I think, to have a future-proof strategy to move at that pace of consumer. And so again, that is what solutions like that are built for. And again, as we see the fruits of the labor, back to your question before, you just inherently see more conversion value and volume when people are adopting it, but also hopefully giving them the control they need to feel confident to step into that space. Because when you talk about 30 years, we've been doing 20 to 30 years of picking every keyword, writing every creative, and I think that that's the thing that needs to change the most.
Yeah. 30 years of picking keywords. That's a lot of keywords that got picked over that period of time, isn't it? Well, that draws us to a close of our session here. And one of the things that Brendan and I were talking about earlier is the great thing about Cannes is you get a chance to have these sorts of conversations. I know some of our clients have had meetings already today with Brendan, but it's just having the time and the headspace to just mull some of these things that we should be thinking about over. So make the most of those moments and really have these conversations, because I know we've just been doing that with Brendan and the team as well, in terms of how should we really be thinking about this and the future, and how do we get organised to make sure we're continually reinventing. But Brendan, I'm going to give you the last word, because again, this is one thing that we like to do. We started off with what you were doing in 1996, 30 years ago. The next 30 years of this industry belongs to whoever?
For us, it is, I'll be crisper. It is who continues to build the experiences that help people in those information journeys, that deliver value to users and deliver value to businesses. That's it. I think for us, it is really stay core to the mission, leverage technology advancements. If you do that, you're going to win and be successful.
Perfect. Thank you, Brendan. Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.